Hello, my name is Kimberly Meredith. I am from Southern California, and I want to talk to you a little bit about Earl Warren. So it was really interesting to decide who I wanted to choose, and I was looking through some names, and I found out Earl Warren is predominantly known for, he was a governor of California for 3 years. And I'm from California, and so I was like, this will be cool to know a little more about him and how he has affected our government and our educational setting. So a little bit about him. He's actually born in Los Angeles, California, March 1891, and he was there for 3 years until his family moved to Bakersfield, and that's also in California. So once his family moved to Bakersfield, he started, once he got older, of course, at 3 years old, he started working on railroads, and he just learned really young about work ethic. So something unique I found out about him is when he reads a newspaper, he would often flip to the sports, and I thought it was really interesting. And he did it because he liked how in the newspaper, in the sports section, they would talk about people's accomplishments more than they would talk about the front page where they would talk about people's failures. So as he grew older, he went to junior high and high school, and he kept going, moving on, and he went to Berkeley. And I don't know if many people know that much about Berkeley. It's one of the top 10 schools in the United States, and it's the most, they reject the most people except Yale and Stanford. So it's very hard to get into. And he got a Bachelor of Law there, and so he's very, he knows education is very important. So what is he most famous for in the education world? Well, he's most famous for Brown versus Board. And Brown versus Board was taken to court, and during this time he was in the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Supreme Court, and Brown versus Board came to the court in 1954, and it was talking a lot about, it was against should schools be allowed to have different races or not segregate. And it originally came in 1896 during Vesey versus Ferguson, and it got passed that states are allowed to separate, and it was called separate but equal. In this, he took a huge leap and took a huge stand on this and said this isn't right, and he took a stand on it. And I really admire that about him, that he went out and took a stand on something and made it known. And it got passed so that schools were allowed to have that intermix of different nationalities and different ethnicities and races. Something I found very interesting is before this happened, he was governor. He was governor, like I said in the beginning, for 3 consecutive terms. And each term was 4 years, so that's 12 years that he was in charge of California, the state. And he's very liked, obviously, for what he accomplished and what he stood for. He was a very optimistic person, as you noticed with the newspaper, and he loved honest and integrity. He held high to that. Something that he did while he was in a governor is it was during the time of when Pearl Harbor was bombed, and he thought that the Japanese weren't safe, and so he had them taken out of their homes and put into camps. And they said 110,000 people, and it was interesting knowing what he did with Brown versus Board compared to what he did while he was governor. And at the time in California, they really liked that he did that because they didn't feel safe with the people that were the Japanese people that were around them, so they liked that they were in camps. But he talks about it later, how it really affected him and how he couldn't stand to know that he separated people that hadn't done anything wrong, and that he had separated them from society and put them into camps. And he said he would never do that again, and he feels horrible for it, and he has thought about it every day, which I thought was really interesting and still shows his integrity and what kind of man he is. So what have I learned from him? I loved how, like I was saying before, I loved how he was very stood to his gun. And I talked about this a lot in my paper about how he clearly made a mistake with the Japanese people, and he noticed that, and he thought at the time it was good for the people, but it wasn't right in the end. And how he learned from that, and how he stepped out and during Broadness' Sports stood up, and even though it was opposite of what he originally thought, he stood up for it, and he made a point. And many people look up to him for what he did. And later he died in July 9th, 1974. And so that's a little more about Earl Warren. I know it's very not much detail. There's a lot to learn, so if you want, read more of what I wrote and just look him up. He's a really neat guy. He's Christian, Protestant, and he believes in high morals and is an awesome guy. Thanks.